Welcome. Take a deep breath of the steam-filled air and listen to the ticking gears. You've just stepped into the Clockwork Asylum. Now, let's get one thing straight. This isn't a lecture hall, it's an engineering bay. And we're not here to study patience, we're here to study schematics. We're going to calibrate, we're going to rewire, and we are going to understand the most terrifyingly intricate machine in the known universe, the human mind. So, here's our blueprint for the night. First, we'll hit the diagnostic workshop to calibrate our tools. Then, we're venturing deep into the asylum's main wards to see the grand malfunctions of psychosis and mood. After that, we enter the apothecary to handle the really volatile stuff, before we wrap things up by looking at the very blueprints of personality itself. All right, first stop is the workshop. You see, before you can even think about fixing a machine this complex, you have to understand what's going on inside it right now. We need to learn how to read its schematics, listen to its strange rhythms, and measure its functions with absolute precision. And our master tool, the one we rely on for everything, is the Mental Status Examination, the MSE. I want you to think of it like a complex astrolabe for charting the psyche. It's not just some simple checklist. No, it's a systematic way for us to observe and map out everything from how a person looks and acts to their mood, their thought processes, and how their brain is functioning. Are they disheveled? Is their speech making any sense? Or is it just flying off on tangents? Do they even know what day it is? This tool gives us our baseline, the coordinates from which every single one of our repairs will be plotted. Now let's talk about anxiety. Picture it as a steam pressure gauge on this psychic engine. At a mild level, the pressure's just right. It actually makes you sharper, better at solving problems. But as you crank that pressure up to moderate, the perceptual field starts to narrow. The machine gets tunnel vision. Go even higher to severe, and that field is so small that the system is just bouncing between scattered details, and you start to hear the machine itself rattling. Those are your somatic symptoms. And then you get to panic. The boiler explodes. It is a full system overload, pure terror, and a complete loss of control. Of course, every engine needs safety valves to handle all that pressure. The mind is no different. Healthy defenses, things like altruism or sublimation, those are really sophisticated, well-machined valves. They take all that psychic pressure and channel it into something productive, maybe even beautiful. But then you've got the maladaptive defenses. These are faulty, rusted-out release valves. Splitting, projection, denial. Sure, they vent the pressure, but they do it by warping the very fabric of reality, distorting how the machine sees the world and even itself. Okay, so what's in our toolkit? These aren't just ways to talk to someone. They are precision instruments for diagnosis and repair. First up, silence and active listening. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just shut up and let the machine reveal its own grinding gears and misfires. Then there's clarification. This is like using a tiny probe, asking specific questions like, is this the part that's making the noise? Reflection is absolutely key. You repeat the signal back to confirm. Okay, I'm hearing a clicking sound. Is that right? And you have got to avoid those non-therapeutic traps. Giving advice or false reassurance, that's not helping. That's just pouring oil on a sparking wire, making everything worse. With our diagnostic tools calibrated, it's time. We are now entering the main wards of the Clockwork Asylum. In here, we're going to come face to face with the most profound mechanical failures of the mind, conditions where reality itself has cracked or the very engine of what makes us go has seized up completely. Our first stop, the schizophrenia ward. It is so important to see this not as madness, but as a fundamental breakdown in the reality engine. The gears that are supposed to distinguish what's a thought from what's real have been stripped bare. The result? A terrifying fusion where the internal world just bleeds out and completely overwrites the external one. And you have to understand the two different kinds of system failures here. Positive symptoms are things that are added to the system. Think of it like static on the radio, a ghost in the machine. Hallucinations, delusions, that bizarre clang association where words are chosen by rhyme instead of reason. Negative symptoms, on the other hand, are functions that are lost. The engine has literally powered down essential parts. Blunted affect, apathy, not being able to feel pleasure, having almost no speech. One is an active distortion. The other is a quiet, devastating deficit. So how do we fix this? Well, these are our rewiring tools. The first-generation antipsychotics are like heavy, crude iron wrenches. They clamp down hard on dopamine, which is great for those positive added symptoms, but that brute force comes at a price, a high risk of extrapyramidal symptoms, the tremors, the stiffness, the awful motor problems. The second-generation drugs are more like precision brass screwdrivers. They fine-tune both dopamine and serotonin, so they can treat both the positive and the negative symptoms with a much lower risk of EPS. So what's the catch? A pretty big risk for metabolic syndrome. We're talking weight gain, diabetes, high cholesterol. There's always a trade-off. Let's move now to a quieter ward, but one where the malfunction is just as profound. Welcome to the depression ward. In here, the primary motivational engine of the psyche has completely stalled. That core drive, the power source that pushes a person through life, has just stopped. There is no ignition, no power, no momentum at all. And the diagnostic panel for major depressive disorder, it's just a series of stark flashing warning lights. To get the diagnosis, you need 5 or more of these things flashing for at least 2 weeks straight. And look at what they are. This isn't just about being sad. This is a total system failure that affects sleep, energy, self-worth, appetite, concentration, and, most critically, the will to even exist. It's a total shutdown. And now for something completely different. In the bipolar ward, the machine isn't stalled. Oh no. It is trapped in a violent, uncontrolled oscillation. It's swinging wildly between 2 extreme energy states, the crushing, silent low of depression and the supercharged, chaotic high of mania, totally unable to find any stable middle ground. And that manic state, it's a condition of critical system overpressurization. Everything is redlining. The mood is dangerously high. Self-esteem blows up into pure grandiosity. The need for sleep just vanishes. Speech becomes a torrent of words just pouring out. Thoughts race in what we call a flight of ideas. The body cannot stay still. And worst of all, judgment completely evaporates, leading to incredibly reckless, high-risk behaviors. The engine is running so hot, it's about to tear itself to pieces. Okay, everybody, I need you to take a deep breath. We are now entering the asylum's apothecary. This is where we handle the most powerful, the most volatile elixirs in all of psychopharmacology. These are the drugs that can work miracles, but they carry catastrophic risks. Mastering this section isn't just about your exam. It is about your patient's life. Pay attention. First up, the monoamine oxidase inhibitors, or MAOIs. These are powerful, older drugs, usually saved for depressions that nothing else can touch. But they are a ticking time bomb. And here is the fatal flaw, the exam question you absolutely cannot miss. If a patient on an MAOI eats foods rich in something called tyramine, we're talking about the good stuff, aged cheese, red wine, salami, even some bananas and yogurt, the result can be a catastrophic hypertensive crisis. Their blood pressure shoots up to deadly levels. We're talking stroke, heart attack, death. The warning signs are a sudden, blasting headache, a stiff neck, a racing heart. Your job is not optional here. It's meticulous, life-or-death dietary education. Next, lithium, the absolute gold standard for bipolar disorder. But here's the deal. Lithium is an unstable element with a razor-thin margin for error. Just look at that therapeutic index, 0.6 to 1.2. That is an insanely narrow window of safety. Anything above 1.5 is toxic. And because your body processes it a lot like sodium, simple things like getting dehydrated, having a stomach bug, or even just taking an Advil can push a patient into toxicity. You have to watch for the signs: coarse hand tremors, nausea that won't quit, confusion, and stumbling. Your job is to monitor blood levels like a hawk and preach the gospel of consistent salt and water intake. Now this is a high-stakes trade-off. Clozapine is probably our single most effective antipsychotic. It's a miracle drug for people with treatment-resistant schizophrenia, but it comes with a terrifying, unique risk, a granulocytosis. It can literally wipe out a person's white blood cells, completely dismantling their immune system. A common cold could kill them. That's why there's a strict, mandatory protocol, weekly blood draws for the first 6 months of treatment. If your patient on clozapine calls you with a sore throat or a fever, it is a full-blown 5-alarm medical emergency. Finally, let's talk about the most common antidepressants, the SSRIs. Don't get complacent just because they're common. They hide 2 very distinct dangers. First, the acute one, serotonin syndrome. If you mix an SSRI with another drug that also boosts serotonin, like an MAOI or even the herbal supplement St. John's wort, you can trigger a toxic surge. You're looking for agitation, muscle rigidity, and a dangerously high fever. The second danger is more insidious, the black box warning. Here's the cruel irony. In the first few weeks, especially in young adults, the SSRI can give them just enough energy to act on suicidal thoughts before their mood actually gets better. You have to monitor them incredibly closely. For our final section, we're examining disorders where the problem isn't just a faulty part, but a flaw in the original blueprints of the self. For these conditions, the mechanic's touch, I'm talking about the therapeutic relationship, structure, and boundaries, is just as critical, maybe even more so, than any elixir we can pull from a bottle. To even begin to understand borderline personality disorder, you have to understand the mechanism of splitting. It's a core processing error. It's like the person's brain can't hold two opposing ideas at the same time. So people aren't seen in shades of gray. No, they're processed in binary, all or nothing. You are either a perfect idealized angel sent to save them, or you are an all-bad, hateful demon. There is zero middle ground, and that's what creates that intense, chaotic instability in all their relationships. And because of that instability, this quote right here is the single most important intervention you need to know for personality disorders. Boundaries. Clear, consistent, unyielding boundaries. Your patients will test them, they will push them, they will try to break them. Your job isn't to be a prison guard, but to be the solid steel structure that they lack inside. Like the strong, predictable walls of this asylum, your consistent limits provide the safety and trust that is necessary before any real therapeutic work can even begin. Okay, this is a big one. You need to know the difference between these two. Delirium is like a temporary software glitch. It happens suddenly, it's acute, and it's almost always caused by some underlying physical issue, like a UTI, a new medication, or dehydration. You find the cause, you fix it, and the delirium goes away. Dementia, on the other hand, is a hardware failure. It is chronic, it is progressive, and it is irreversible. The original blueprints of the mind aren't just corrupted, they are actively degrading, fading away until there's nothing left. One is a glitch you can fix. With the other, the hard drive is failing and you can never get the data back. Finally, let's look at the fuel system. With anorexia, the system actively rejects fuel because of a distorted perception of the machine's own size. With bulimia, the system takes in massive amounts of fuel only to violently purge it right back out. But here's the ultimate paradox. The most dangerous moment can be during the treatment itself. It's a condition called refeeding syndrome. When you start giving carbs to a starved body, the insulin surge drives electrolytes, phosphate, potassium, magnesium, out of the blood and into the cells so fast it can cause a heart attack and death. The very act of saving them can be lethal if it's not done incredibly carefully. So, we've toured the asylum, we've inspected the machinery, we've unboxed the tools, and we have examined the most volatile elixirs. The schematics are now in your hands. So the question is no longer about what you need to memorize for a test. The question is this. You are now the chief engineer of the mind. Faced with this beautiful, this terrifying, this broken machine, which tool will you choose and how will you wield it?